This is Never Down, Never Out with T.R. Matson. This podcast is about discipline when motivation fades, resilience when things get hard, and showing up when quitting would be easier. No hype, no shortcuts, just the mindset required to build something real. One day at a time. Let's get into it. Welcome back. Never down, never out. T.R. Matson, we are ending February, I think, right? Holy moly. That's insane. I don't know. What day is it? I lose track of time. Best thing about being an airline pilot is you never know what day it is. 2 months into the year, or at least close to it. I hope everybody's doing well. Appreciate, again, you tuning in, all the support, the comments. It's huge. It means a lot to me. I think it means a lot to my family too. My wife, she's a grown woman, right? I'm not going to impress her, but my son will ask me, if he sees me on my phone looking at comments or if he comes home and I've been in the office working on things, he's like, "Hey Dad, how's it going? How's the podcast going?" He's genuinely interested. I think it's kind of cool. He wants to start listening to it. I think we're going to let that happen. So, all your positivity, it works both ways, right? It's making a difference. It's helping other people that listen and read the comments, and it's helping my family and I, which I appreciate. So thanks again for tuning in. Today, episode 54, a topic that I flat out stink at. I'm horrible. I've always been horrible. Learning to say no. I'm so bad at it. I always want more on my plate. Not physically. Well, you've heard my stories at times in my life. Physically, I wanted more on my plate too, but that's not what I'm getting at here. The thing that comes to mind the most, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my day job, which I tend not to because I don't like to cross the streams. My goal in all of this is to not be an aviation influencer. I don't really even want to be an influencer. I want to be a positivity enabler because I know that you have positivity in you, and I want to use my words to get it out and make the world a better place. And that sounds really hokey, but I don't care. I'm going to stick with it. So I don't want to become an airline influencer. I very rarely post about my day job. But for a long time, been an airline pilot over 11 years now. For a long time of that, I was an instructor. And I remember vividly when I started teaching. So I got this job. I'd been at the airline a few years, and I applied for this job because I needed a change. And I missed teaching. I genuinely missed it. I love teaching in the Navy. It's one of the things that kind of broke my heart to get out. And I remember going through initial training at the airline. People were like, "Hey, maybe one day you'd be an instructor," all this. And, I was in the mentality of dude, I'm trying not to get fired. I'm trying to learn how to fly an airliner, let's not talk about teaching it. But I finally got the job, it opened, there was an opening, I applied and I got selected. And day one, my first ever thing I had to do as an airline instructor is we had an all instructor meeting. I didn't know anybody in that room except for the two people that were on the panel that hired me. And I said hello to them, and I went, and they told me, "Hey, go sit over there." I'm like, "Okay." And I sat down, and I kind of just listened. And one of the groups of people in our fleet that spoke was the upset recovery subject matter expert. And there was a team, it was 2 or 3 at the time. And this was a big push. This was back 2017. Big push at the airlines for this all attitude upset recovery and all that. And I was like, what? I taught unusual attitude stuff in the military. And What I didn't realize is I tried, and I'm bad at this too, is I tried to make the airline instructor life what I assumed it would be based on my military time. So I assumed that I couldn't just go in and teach sims and go home. Like I assumed I would have to have what we used to call in the Navy as a ground job. And I was wrong. So on the first break after this subject matter expert spoke, I went to the fleet manager, and she happened to be sitting next to the fleet captain. And I said, hey, I know I'm new here, but if you ever need somebody for this job, like I'd be interested. First day. And what was interesting about it is that very same meeting, that person that spoke was actually leaving the role. So by lunchtime, the fleet manager came up to me and she was like, hey, I know you mentioned that. Like, are you serious? Like, would you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah. Because in my mind, I'm like, if I'm going to have to do a side job, it might as well be a fun side job, right? I don't want to do something that I don't enjoy. Because again, in my brain, I assumed I was going to have to do something. And I remember her saying, she smiled, she goes, okay, it's yours. She goes, be careful what you wish for. And I was like, that's odd. And I went through all the training for it, and it was very enjoyable. But then shortly thereafter, I got a call from the head of the guy who writes the continuing curriculum, the CQ that we go through every 9 months. And he said, hey, could you come in and show me what maneuvers we have to do, with the all attitude upset stuff for this next cycle? And I said, sure. He goes, I'll pay you. Just come in the sim. Well, I go, okay, no problem. So I came in, we chatted. I showed him the maneuvers that were up. And we walked out of the sim. He goes, hey, have you ever written curriculum? And I was like, well, not at Delta. I mean, I'd only been an instructor a couple months. I was still barely learning how to teach myself, in this. It's a very different style of teaching in an airline compared to the Navy. And he goes, would you ever be interested? And I was like, sure. Because again, the way I was brought up in the military is like, you don't say no, right? Like when you're new, you volunteer, you do things, right? That's how you make a name for yourself. And I did that job for 5 years with other jobs added on. And it was rewarding, but it also did the opposite eventually. It became too much. I remember vividly having a conversation with my best friend who wasn't an instructor at the time. He had been an instructor for a little bit, and then 2020 hit, and we downsized, and he went back to just flying. And he was out there flying, and he goes, man, you should think about upgrading and becoming a captain and all this. And I was like, man, I don't know, like the instructor job. And he goes, think about it. And I'll never forget this. He's very smart. He goes, you have quantity time at home because you teach, but is it quality? He goes, you've said yes to so many things that how often, he goes, when was the last time your son came into the office and you told him to hold on because you were on the phone with somebody from work after hours? And it hit hard. It really did. So, ultimately I went on and I upgraded and I left the training department. And then I went back for a little bit because it worked out really well with my daughter. And then it was time to move on again. And I've been out of the training department now a year and a half, and it's been good. I like it. Will I go back? Maybe. I don't know. I like teaching. I miss teaching. But the point I'm getting at is I need to, and oftentimes we all need to, learn how to say no. We are not invincible. We are not superhuman. We are flawed individuals walking this planet trying to figure it out. None of us are perfect, and none of us can do it all. And you shouldn't even compare yourself to other people and what they can do, because everybody's different, and everybody's in a different point in their life, and everybody's in a different situation. And if you're a giver and people ask a lot of you, you tend to get stretched very thin. And if you do that, you find yourself in a situation where you cannot not say yes. You have to say yes to everything. There's a fine line between saying yes and taking on more responsibility and going too far. What I've learned is that fine line lives in that mirror when I'm brushing my teeth at night. Is the work that I did today beneficial to the things, the pillars of my life that matter to me? Right? So I've talked about the faith, the family, the fitness, the finance, the 4 F's of T.R. Matson. There should be a t-shirt. Faith, family, fitness, finances. Is what I did today beneficial to those? If the answer is no, okay, then was that thing a one-time thing? Was it me just blowing off steam, having a little fun? Because maybe that is for my family, right? Because I can't be a good dad if I'm so high-strung and all that, right? But if it's only benefiting others and it's not fitting into my 4 pillars, my 4 F's, then I have to take a good hard look at it and make sure that it is something that is still worth doing. Because you've heard all the sayings at jobs, 10% of the people do 90% of the work, and all of this stuff is true. I mean, anybody who's been on a group project, anybody who's worked in any type of job, there are people that do far more work than others. It's just the reality of it. And that's okay. When we talk about the instructor job at the airlines, that's okay because it did benefit me for a while. It benefited my family. I was home more. I was making good money. I wasn't flying all over the world. In those very influential years of my children's life, the first 3 years, I was there. That's huge. So it is. It benefited one of, if not multiple, of the F's of my 4 F's. But at some point it stopped. And then it started pulling from one of those pillars. And that's when it's time to say no. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have all the answers on this. I struggle with this all the time. I really do. But I think a lot of times in life, if we accept the things that we struggle at, if we take a good hard look at ourselves and understand our flaws, we could work on becoming a better version of ourselves. So here I am telling the internet, telling my kids and their kids and anybody else who's listening that I have struggled my whole life with saying no. But at 46, I realize how important it is. That's not to say you should say no to everything, right? The old Navy acronym of never again volunteer yourself. I don't believe in that either because I don't think you grow if you live that way. So there's somewhere in the middle, much like everything in life. And that middle is critical to understand. Where I finally started understanding it is when I realized what truly matters to me in my life. My faith, my family, my fitness, and my finances. My 4 F's. Feel free to use that. I have not trademarked that yet. I'm just kidding. But if you have a foundation, if you have pillars that are what you believe and what matters to you, then when external sources ask for things, you can look at it objectively and go, yeah, I mean, that will benefit my pillars. I'll do it. Or, you know what, it's going to take away from one but add to the other, and I could do that for short term, right? So there's no hard and fast black and white answer on this. This is all gray area, and you have to assess this throughout your life, sometimes daily. And the instance of this podcast is a prime example. Like, it takes time, not just the recording, but the setting up the topics, the getting everything put together, the publishing it, the advertising of it, right? The reading the comments. That takes time. That's time away from my family. But it also, I hope, gets a message out there, starting with my children, and then hopefully the ripple effect from there, that ultimately is beneficial, right? And if that's the case, then I think I'm doing the right thing. At least I'm making the best decision that I can make today, for what it's worth. So this one's tough. I knew I was talk a little bit longer about this one. Let me know if you're one of those people that can't say no. We can help each other out in the comments. Maybe we'll start a support group, for people trying to be overachievers that can't say no to requests. But keep working at it, and I think where I've seen a difference for me, all rambling aside, is when I anchored down what was important to me in my life, what truly matters to me at the end of the day: faith, family, fitness, finances. Then I could say no to things that don't fit into any of that. I hope that helps you. Thanks again for tuning in. You guys are great. We'll talk tomorrow. If this episode helped you, don't just listen, apply it. Progress is built in what you do after the message ends. Remember, never down, never out. I'll see you tomorrow.